Welcome back. I will be reading Chapter 4 of the Western Book. Here we go. Get in bed. Get your snacks. Enjoy it all. 'Cause I will be back. There's no edits here. And it's all natural. Enjoy and rest. Close your eyes and sleep. Chapter 4 of the Western Book. Cole and I rode up north of town one morning to look at the wild horses in the hills, a little west of where Randall Bragg had his ranch. They were there for the same reason Bragg was. Because of the water, we set our animals on top of a low hill and watched the herd graze in the sun on the eastern flank of the next hill. 7 mares, 2 falls, and a gray leopard, Appaloosa, stallion that looked to be maybe 16 hands. The stallion raised his head and stared at us. His nostrils were flared, trying to catch more scent. His tail was up. His skin twitched. He pranced a couple of steps towards us, putting himself between us and the mares. We didn't move. The stallion arched his neck a little. They hate the gelding, I said. Stallions don't like much, Cole said. They like mares, I said. The stallion went back to grazing, but always between us and the mares. Virgil, I said. I'm not minding it. But why are we up here, looking at the horse? I like wild horses, Cole said. Well, that's nice, Virgil. Cole nodded. The horses moved across the hillside, grazing their tails, flicking occasionally to brush away a fly. The stallion now, and then raising his head, sniffling in the wind, looking at us. There was no breeze. Occasionally, one of the mares would snort and toss her head. The stallion would look at her, wriggly for a moment, until she went back to grazing. Easy life, Cole said. They get through. Here, there's another hill. Stallions look a little tense, I said. He's watchful, Cole said. Don't you suppose to get warmed down? I said. All the time watchful. The wolves and coyotes and people of the other stallions. He's free, Cole said. He's alive. He does what he wants. He goes where he wants. He got what he wants. He and all got to do the fight for it. Guess he's won all the fights, I said. In a cluster of rocks on top of one of the hills west of us and the horses, several coyotes sat silently, watching the herd with yellow eyes. Falls better not stray, I said to Cole. The stud knows about them, Cole said. See how he looks over there? Falls all the right, long as they stay with the herd. The sun was quiet right now, maybe 11 in the morning. Our own horses stood silently, heads dropped, waiting. Virgil, I said after a time, there are very nice horses, but shouldn't somebody be uploading the law and Appaloosa? Cole nodded, but he didn't say anything. He didn't move. To the east of us, a thin stream of dark smoke moved along the horizon. The stallion spotted it. He straightened, staring, his eyes forward, His tail's arched, small in the distance, barely significant, more than a mile away. Oh wow, appeared from behind the hills, traveling 5 cars. The stallion stared. I could see his skin twitch. The train moved along the plain towards Appaloosa. Then the stallion wheeled towards the herd and nipped one of the mares, and the herd was in motion. The stallion behind them, herding them. The falls go flat out, all legs and ankles, but keeping up. We watched as they disappeared, west over the hill, away from the train, and Cole stared a long time after them before he turned the horses east towards Appaloosa. Chapter 5. We all had a jail, but then there was nobody in it. Cole liked to sit in the salon and watch what was going on. He liked to nurse a glass of whiskey while he watched. So did I. We sit down most of the time, but if there might be trouble, we sat on opposite sides of the room. It was Cole who decided. It was one of his rules. Today, we were on opposite sides of the room while we were sitting and nursing. Inside a hot, bright morning, Randall Bragg came to see us. He walked into the salon with half a dozen men and paused inside the door and looked around while we waited for his eyes to adjust. Then he nodded his men towards the bar and walked over to where Cole was sitting. His spurs jangled loudly in suddenly quiet saloon. "My name's Randall Bragg," I said. "Virgo Cole, I know who you are," Bragg said. "We need to talk." Cole nodded at a chair. Along the bar, Bragg's men had spread out, watching Cole. Bragg sat down. "I see the big fellow across the room with a shotgun," Bragg said. "8 gauge, Cole said. "Good idea. Spreading out like that, it is?" Cole said. Bragg gestured towards the bar, and one of his Bragg's men brought him a bottle of whiskey and a glass. Bragg poured himself a shot and looked at it like he was thinking about it. Then he drank the shot down and poured it himself another one. "You're a drinking man," he said to Cole. "Not so much," Cole said. "And Mr. 8 gauge over there?" "Evett," Cole said. "Evett Hitch," without looking at me. Bragg said, "You a drinking man, Evett?" "Not so much," I said. "Hearty like a man that don't drink a little," Bragg said. My back hat was set square on the head. Even sir, you could see all was tall, and the hat made him look taller. He had a starchy white shirt and black pants with a fine chalk stripe tucked into his head towards back boots. His purse was silver. His gun belt was stubbed with silver couches, and his host was a Colt and white pearl grip. Cole smiled. "But not impossible," Cole said. "Well," Bragg said, "we'll see." He drank most of his second drink and wiped the corners of his mouth with thumb and fingerprints, pinching his lower lip in the process. "You shot 3 of hands," Bragg said. He wasn't looking at Cole when he said it. He was carefully pouring more whiskey into his near-empty glass. "Matter of fact," Cole said, "I only shot 2. Hitch shot the other one." I smiled and shrugged. "Point is," Bragg said, "I can't have hands coming here and boys shooting them." "I see," See how you feel that way, Cole said. So we need to make an argument, Bragg said. We do? Bragg slightly nodded. Everyone was looking at Cole Bragg. While they were looking, I picked my shotgun up and off the floor under my table and held it in my lap, just below the table. You have suggestions, Marshal? There's a set of two beyonds posted right outside the door of this very salon, Cole said. Your boys do like your boys say, and everything will be mine. Bragg's face pinched a little. And if you don't, he said, then I'll arrest you. And if they don't go along, I shoot them. Cole smiled sort happily at Bragg. He nodded towards me, or he Vance does. I had moved the shotgun onto the table's top. As Bragg looked over at me, I cocked it. That's your ideal of an argument? Bragg said, after a moment. The law of the argument there is, Cole said. Your law, Bragg said. Same thing, Cole said. The men along the bar were looking at Bragg and looking at the shotgun. Bragg said silently for a moment, looking at Cole, deep in thought. Maybe, then he said, this town belongs to me. I was there first. Can't file no claim of town, Bragg. I can't. You first. Cole didn't say anything. He sat perfectly still, with his hands relaxed on the top of the table. Leaning forward towards him, Bragg said, I got near 30 hands, Cole. So far, Cole said, you're proposing to kill us all? That'd be up to you, boys, Cole said. Maybe you ain't good enough, Bragg said. I could see it in the way he sat and the way he held his head in the hands. He was trying to decide. Could he beat Cole? Could he try? Don't be sure. Quickly then, Bragg said. He wasn't trying to talk himself into it. So far been quick enough, Cole said. Bragg was silent for a moment. Then I could see him giving up. He stood carefully with his hands apart and flag on the table. This ain't the time, he said. Don't mean there won't be a time, Bragg said. I see you are healed in the boys. They're healed. I know you haven't had a chance to read the barrels yet, so I'm going to let it pass. But the bylaws say that's illegal to carry guns inside 2 limits. So next time, I'm going to have to disarm you and lock you up a bit. Bragg's body stiffened. His shoulders seemed to hunch. He opened his mouth and closed it and stood for another moment. Then he turned without a word and walked out of the salon. His ranch hands struggled after him. Chapter 6. The woman got off the train in the morning carrying a big carpet bag and walked slowly up the main street into Caf Paris, where Cole and I were having breakfast. I've never been to Paris. I've read about it. I was pretty sure there was no calves like this one. One of the Chinamen he cooked there kept some chickens. So then he had some eggs on the menu. But today, I like a lot of days, you were eating pinto beans and fried salt pork along with the coffee and some sour biscuits. The biscuits were pretty tasty. The women sat at the table near us and looked at the menu for a long time, and finally ordered coffee and biscuits. No sale, and China Boy said, but they're on the menu, he said, without breakfast. But all I want is a biscuit. No sale. Cole was wiping his plate with half a biscuit. Without looking up, he said, "Chin Sally biscuit." The China boy looked at Cole for a moment, outraged at the proximity of it. Boss say, "Sell her a biscuit." Cole said again and looked up from the plate. The China boy looked quickly away from Cole and brought the woman coffee, 2 biscuits on a plate. He added a pinch of soda to show that there was no ill will. The woman gave him 25 cents. "Look across, Cole." "Thank you," she said. Cole smiled at her. "It was a pleasure," he said. She was a little traveler worm, but still looking with a strong young body that her dress didn't hide. I could see her looking at the star of the chest. "Are you on the sheriff's here?" she said. "City marshal," Cole said. "Virgil Cole, big blind fellow. Here's the deputy, Hitch." "How do you do?" she said. "Could you direct me to a clean hotel?" "We only got one," Cole said. "It is expensive, probably more than it should be, there being no other choices." "I only have $1, she said. Cole nodded. "What's your name?" He said, "Mrs. French," she said. "Allison French." "You have a husband, Mrs. French?" "He died." "Sorry to hear that," Cole said. "You do any kind of work?" "I play the organ," she said, "and the piano." "You're not a H?" "Don't be crude," she said. "I'm not what you said. No fling fluffer in the feathers about it," Cole said. "Don't see a lot of single women. There ain't no H. Well, I'm one." Cole said to me. I nodded. Cole was always improving himself, reading books, making lists of words, which is usually slightly misleading. "Well, the hotel let me stay $1, Mrs. French said. Cole grinned. "For as long as you like, Mrs. French." She frowned. "How can that be?" she said. "Might hire the play of the piano, too." Cole said, "You think I'll ever—" "I do," I said. "When you finish your breakfast," Cole said. "Event, here we go, down the second." "My pleasure." She finished her biscuit, slipped the other one into the carpet bag. She smiled and stood. "Thank you very much for your kindness." "No trouble, all," he said. "Evan, you will speak with Mrs. Raines." "I will." Cole stood like all the moments. He seemed to go from sitting, standing, without effort. "Good. I hope to see you again, Mrs. French." "Yes, that would be nice." I picked up the carpet bag and walked down the main street toward the hotel. "You have freckles, Mrs. French." "Sandy hair and freckles." "Yes," I said. "I think that's cute in a man." "Me too," I said. I was more aware I'd been all the way her body moved into the skirt. "How can Mr. Cole be sure that they will give me a room?" She said we walked along the plank sidewalk. I smiled because I'm going to tell the man that owns the place, and Mr. Cole wants to them. "Does Mr. Cole always get what he wants?" she said. "Pretty much," I said. Chapter 7 will continue. Good night.